Why would I give the enemy the documents?
Now
you
I'm the
are
enemy.
not fair.
Now
you are
I'm
not
the enemy.
impartial.
Great.
You
Rudy,
are totally
anything else?
biased, and your network is a creature of the Democratic National Committee.
Well, that was Rudy Giuliani in the midst of what appeared to be a gigantic meltdown on CNN's Cuomo primetime. So now, this moment happened during a discussion about the whistleblower. So yesterday, news broke, whistleblower in the intelligence community filed a complaint that the president might have made a promise of what we later found out, or at least we're speculating to be, the promise of military aid to the president of Ukraine in order to get dirt on his political opponent, which would happen to be Joe Biden. Yikes. That's concerning. Now, for some reason, during this discussion, or I should say before, they decided to have on Rudy Giuliani to defend Donald Trump. And of course, it went the way that he would expect it to go. Let me give you some more of the conversation. This was a very long conversation. It was a very long interview, but I basically had to condense this thing down to where we wouldn't spend the rest of the show watching it. So why don't you take a look at some of the highlights?
I don't know the answer to why it was released, but I find nothing wrong in what he did. I find
You
a
don't
lot
even know
wrong.
what he did.
I find a lot wrong in what you are covering up,
believe
and
me,
what you
I'm well
continue
aware.
to cover up, and what your network continues to cover up.
And I'm telling
which
you,
will
you
make
give me
what-
proof of what you found.
I
will
have
vet
proof.
it and put it
Go
and give it to
look,
me.
Go look at Joe Biden garbage.
No matter what I hear
Completely
tonight
not
after this
true.
interview,
and you are now.
Yeah. What am I
engaging
now?
in all kinds of fantasies
what am I now?
about the president when there's clear proof about a Democrat and you can't handle it. And how about we go to China when he flew his son there on Air Force Two?
Listen,
and 8 days
Rudy,
later, the
I don't
son
know what
got
any of this
1
has
point.
to do with what I've been asking you about
What it
tonight.
has to do
I gotta
with
be
how
honest.
unfair you are. Do you get
It's
that?
unfair for me to
It's
not want to
unfair.
tolerate you talking about Joe Biden all night long when we have an inspector general fighting with the DNI, fighting with Congress over a whistleblower complaint that involves this president
So we have an
and
anonymous
you
whistleblower
and what you've been
complaint.
doing
We
playing
have an
with Ukraine.
anonymous whistleblower compared to
All right. I
clear
gotta-
proof that Biden's son got $1.5 billion from China, and you won't cover it. Tell me you're not unfair.
Rudy, I told you. Give me the proof.
Nobody buys that, Chris. That's why your
but
network
I'm
has
sure
no
they
ratings.
buy. I'm sure they buy.
They
that
buy the
everything
fact
you're
that you
saying
are in
right
the
now
tank
has
for the
nothing to
Democratic
do
Party.
with distracting from what this president's
I am not
problems
distracting.
might be. I hear
and
you.
you covered up so much more about Hillary.
I'm covering
It's
it up
disgusting.
so much that I've kept this interview going 28 minutes and let you say it a dozen
and
times.
interrupted me
That's how
500
afraid
times
of it I am.
to try to
Well,
stop
you've
me
made
from
2
telling the
points.
American people
You've
what's
made 2
actually
points.
going on,
You've
so
made
you
2
can
points.
continue to mislead them, which
All
is
right.
what you're doing.
Well, you've been here the whole time, so you're part of it now. You're
I'm
co-conspirator.
not part of misleading them.
Rudy
Everything I
Giuliani,
said, I can document.
Thank you.
Every
give it to
single
me.
thing I said,
then
I can
give
document.
me the documents. Thank you.
I'm not going to give you the documents. Why would I give you the documents?
Because you want
You're not
the truth
going
to
to
come
use
out.
them for a
You're
good
not making
purpose.
any sense to me
If
on
I
this point.
trusted you, of course I'm making sense.
Now you don't trust me either. All right, Rudy Giuliani.
Why would I give the enemy the documents?
Now I'm
you
the
are
enemy.
not fair.
Now
you are
I'm
not
the enemy.
impartial.
Great.
You
Rudy,
are totally
anything else?
biased, and your network is a creature of the Democratic National Committee.
All right. So that happened. A few things to dissect here. So, for one, okay, this is a discussion about Donald Trump, not Joe Biden. I know the reason that he brings up Joe Biden. It's a gigantic deflection because, well, right now, we don't know really the details of the call too much. We do believe that it is Trump trying to get dirt on his possible opponent in the general election, Joe Biden. But again, we don't know the specific details of what exactly kind of aid was promised to Ukraine. So, okay. So now when you bring up Ukraine and then Joe Biden, as Giuliani does, he's actually, there's a kernel of truth there. So let me give you the details on this, right? And it's not what it's not what Giuliani is making it out to be. Now, it's been reported, and this is not a new report, as Cuomo points out, that Hunter Biden, that's Joe Biden's son, held a directorship for a Ukrainian gas company while his father was vice president. So now that is that a conflict of interest? Well, when you ask policy experts on Ukraine, they agree that Hunter's acceptance of a position did create a conflict of interest for his father. So that's true. There is a conflict of interest, and that's not a good thing, right? Now, Biden also urged Ukraine to fire its top prosecutor. Now, that was his father, right? With the threat of withholding U.S. aid. However, that happened to be the position of the entire U.S. government at the time, as well as other international institutions. So you can't really tie it back to just Biden looking out for his son himself. There's no actual evidence that Biden did that solely to enrich himself or his son. Any benefit, which we don't know if there was any benefit, would have been purely coincidence. It's not even clear that the company was actively under investigation and that the change of prosecutors would have benefited that company anyway. So those are some very key points to remember, right? Not at all what Rudy Giuliani is making it out to be. Oh, the $1.5 billion Ukraine. Let's look over there. Squirrel. Ignore what President Trump did, and let's argue over this. And then I'm going to attack the news, fake news, right? So yeah. Now, a couple more points on Biden, real quick here. Lincoln Mitchell, an adjunct research scholar at Columbia University, said, quote, "It's not a crime when it comes to Biden, right? But it's a lapse and it's troubling." So do you want to look into that? Should we look into that? Yeah, maybe we should. You know what? It'd be fair to launch an investigation. In fact, the Trump administration, interestingly enough, has refused to launch an investigation into that. Huh. Now, if that's a big talking point, why isn't the Trump administration looking into it? The Ukrainian government is saying, please come look into it, Trump administration. But so far, you've not. Well, that's curious. Yes, curious indeed. Something tells me that it's basically deflection or talking point. Again, as usual, you're going to have establishment Democrats doing shady things, having shady deals. But hey, at least it's not like the Trump administration, which literally does illegal things. And by illegal things, of course, I mean obstruction of justice. During the Mueller report, we have about 10 counts of obstructions. You have the violations of the Emoluments Clause, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So Rudy Giuliani has literally no leg to stand on here. And all he can do is rant and rave and deflect and call CNN the enemy. Why would I give the documents to the enemy? Look, I got issues with CNN. I got issues with Chris Cuomo, right? And, of course, old establishment media. That said, the key difference here is I'm not calling them the enemy. They're not the enemy. They're not the fake news media. They have a perspective. That perspective is the establishment. And so they will represent establishment interests. That's why we have independent progressive media to actually represent the people. That's why it's important that we have people on YouTube that are actually representing regular people and not people that are, again, no big offense to Chris Cuomo here, but he's a millionaire and he generally represents his own class interests. And then again, to be fair to him as well, he has been bringing on some progressives as of late, and that's always a good sign to make their case. So, look, if you want to make a case about, Joe Biden and conflicts of interest, that's fine. But just make sure your own house is clean before you start throwing stones at someone else's. And Rudy and Trump, well, they just can't do that because their house is dirtier than ever. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.